In Google Analytics, you have client ID and user ID. But what's the difference? Let's take a look. When Google Analytics 4 is activated on a page, it sets several cookies in your browser. In Google Chrome, you can see them by clicking three dots, then More Tools and Developer Tools. Then go to Application, expand Cookies, and select your domain. Here in the filter, if you enter _GA, you will see two cookies. Both of them are related to the GA4 property. And if you take a closer look at the _GA, you will see two large numbers, one number, dot, and another number. So these two numbers right here are a client ID. And when a new visitor lands on your website, Google Analytics randomly generates a client ID and stores this in a cookie. So these two numbers are the client ID. If I delete the cookies and then refresh the page, Google Analytics is activated and then a new value of the client ID is created. This is a random number and this is the timestamp of when this cookie was created. Now, if I browse the site and go from one page to another, that cookie persists. Therefore, Google Analytics knows that the visitor who had this client ID on the previous page and on this page is the same visitor. So if a visitor lands on your site, and let's say the visitor browses with Chrome on the desktop or on laptop, then some random client ID will look like this. But if the same visitor browses the same site with a different browser or a different device, for example Chrome, but on mobile, then Google Analytics will not know that on desktop the same user had this client ID. For the Chrome browser on the mobile device, this visitor will look like a new visitor. That's why Google Analytics will create a new client ID. Since the same person has two different devices and two different client IDs, Google Analytics will actually think that this person are two different visitors. As a result, by default, your user metrics will be inflated, at least to some extent. Now, to mitigate this issue, at least partially, Google Analytics also offers a user ID feature, but it works only if your website has a login feature where the visitor can log in, and then your website will understand that this logged in user on desktop and on mobile device is the same because the user is logged in on both of those devices. In that case, Google Analytics would understand this is the same user. But again, I want to emphasize that this will work only if your website has a login feature and you have some user ID in your database. So these are generated by Google Analytics randomly. But this is the ID of the visitor that you or your developers store in the database of your website or your platform. For example, here I have a demo page where let's say that I have logged in as a visitor and I asked a developer to push the user ID to the data layer. So in the preview mode of Google Tag Manager, when it is enabled, I would get a logged in event or maybe message or some other event that contains the user ID. So now I could use this and send together with events to Google Analytics 4. I would need to create a data layer variable and then include it as a user ID parameter in my tags. I will not be explaining how to set the user ID tracking with GA4 because that's a topic for another tutorial. And if you want to learn more about that, then I will post a link to this particular user ID tutorial below the video. So to sum up, client ID is an ID that Google Analytics randomly generates and stores in a cookie when GA4 tracking code is activated on a page. And in fact, if we check the outgoing requests, so I will just go to the developer tools, enter the word collect in the network tab, and then reload the page. Here I will see the request that was sent to Google Analytics. And one of the parameters here is CID, which is client ID. And that's what was fetched by GA4 from the cookie. But if your website also has a login feature, then you can enrich your requests to GA4 and also include the user ID. As I've said, the tutorial on the further instructions can be found below the video, but in general, it would look like this, where you have the user ID parameter and you give it a particular value. For example, here it is a data layer variable that fetches the user ID from the data layer. This kind of data is not available in the data layer by default. At least on many websites, you would need to either cooperate with developers and ask them to push this data to the data layer, or maybe you're working with some popular content management system or some popular e-commerce platform that maybe has a Google Tag Manager plugin or integration, and that platform offers this kind of data in the data layer out of the box. Hopefully now you better understand the difference between client ID and user ID. If you found this video useful, hit the like button below the video. That will help me understand what videos do you like and what should I create in the future. Also, if you want to learn more about Google Tag Manager or GA4, then subscribe to this channel. My name is Julius, this is Analytics Mania, and I'll see you in the next video.